Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday, February 11th Working Group Component Standard meeting. I'm excited about today because Merrick is going to be presenting the structured logging KEP. That's generated a lot of discussion and, could be some pretty cool improvements to our logging subsystem. So Merrick, are you on the call?
Yes.
Do you want to maybe share your screen and take it away?
Okay, I will try to. So, so I will briefly go through like the structured logging KEP to get everyone on the same page. And I will also secondly discuss what changes we did and how it evolved. So, okay, let me just prepare. And just sharing screen. Okay. Can you see it correctly?
I can, yes.
Okay.
Looks good.
Okay, so what are the current goals of structured logging KEP? So overall, we want to, so currently logs in Kubernetes are free normal or old format based logging, which leaves a lot of they're not very guided. They're pretty chaotic. I know if chaotic, really, yeah. They're not very organized, or they really lack structure. So this means that they're very hard to query, and they're they're expensive to store, because it's hard to query because you basically need to already know and understand log lines that you want to find, and and when storing, you basically always need to have full text search based on and you need to index whole text fields. So based on the feedback, the current goal of structure of this KEP is to improve formatting and queryability of most volume-heavy logs in Kubernetes, such as we can get most benefits from introducing more structured API that is more guided and more guided, but with main restriction of having doing it with limited resources, because everyone would be happy to do a migration and migrate all the logs in Kubernetes at once, but there are over 10,000 log calls in Kubernetes, making it not only hard to do manually, it's hard to automate it in reasonable sense, and it's even harder. One of the hardest things would be trying to review and merge it, because it would put a huge work onto other SIGs to do reviews for all those changes. So we are mainly focusing on really high volume logs. So we are targeting to 3/9 of percentage of logs volume to be corrected, which translates basically to to about 20 log lines or log calls to logging API or logging library. So this is like overall like our goals in migration. So at the end, by this cap, we would introduce a new interface or new methods that would instead of having formats like logs, having a more structured like interface, which means having a normalized message that and all those arguments to the log having separated and each of them having been named. So maybe I will. This is example of the API that we want to introduce, and by changing those logs into new API, we are expecting to overall improve the message in text format, so that has at least some structure and it's more easier to query, and also have a separate option to generate logs using JSON output format. So one of the problems that we also want to solve is the inconsistency of referring to Kubernetes objects. So if you look into like current logs, there are lots of ways. Like usually at least for pod, you can see as many reference to, but only pod name, and as many to using both namespace and pod name. And this is like only looking at the pods. I think they're like it's harder to automatically gather, but there is no one like obvious way that it should be done. So as additional change, we want to maybe define a list of or define how Kubernetes objects should be represented in log lines, and possibly create a module or set of utility functions. Or there was recently a proposal to build it into logging API. So those objects are there's a uniform format for the referencing those objects. So originally, so Michael asked me to present it because originally we were not sure where to put the configuration and of the logging, and also we were unsure where to put this. So we called it metadata package. So this set of functions that would handle formatting the objects, like references to objects. So within current proposal, we are thinking about adding possibility, or within this cap, we want to have at the end of it 2 working logging formats that will be separate, like supported, and will have some will be independent. And we want to for future we want to like leave ability to expand those the choice of logging format, or even allow people to implement their own. And this as this configuration options, and we think that this could be shared between all the components. So I think Michael suggested that we should put it as part of component base, so we can start standardized logging, configuration, and logging formats there.
Yeah, I think I think it could be a good idea to put it in component base. I think there's possibly some nuance around it. Like if you're mostly making changes to Klog, right, then maybe it makes sense for it just to be with Klog. Like Klog is kind of in some ways unique in that it's separate from everything else as far as the repo structure. Whereas a lot of other things like this gone into component base, and I don't think we would add Klog to component base just because of how big a change that would be. So, I could see, for example, if, there were options on Klog, but then like maybe some like more advanced options that we still wanted to be common across our components, we'd put login config in component base because it like builds on top of Klog. But if it's literally just what Klog needs, then maybe it makes sense for it to be close to Klog, just for convenience.
Originally this proposal had much bigger scope, and we were thinking about replacing Klog and with some generic interface. So here we for sure we are thinking about having it as a component, but I think there is still big interest into doing it in the future. So I think I left it in future work, which is propose a replacement for Klog. This is something that is really something that really Solly, Ross, and Tim Hawking are working on for a long time. So basically, replacing internals of Klog with generic interface that doesn't depend on any implementation, and then having after with firstly Klog internals replaced, then and structured logging, we could then switch to new interface, and this interface could component base looks like a best place to to have the default default implementations of this interface, and this was originally suggested.
That makes sense to me. Yeah.
Yes. So here with the main goal of these changes is not only to improve this interface, but also make logging in Kubernetes not so if you develop your own component and you want to use Kubernetes standard logging and use Klog, you then get huge baggage of dependencies that you need to install that are just transient dependencies on dependencies that you don't care and don't want to, you don't need. So here idea, if we standard about the interface and maybe put the interface, then you could have component base only declare the interface and leave the implementation up to particular distribution or component to import if they need to use.
Cool.
Yeah, so I tried to briefly go through it. I would be really interested to take any questions and maybe talk about what were plans of from the component working group about logging and how we can maybe consolidate and make sure that both efforts make some sense.
Yeah, so I think there's two places we can really fit in. One is just the expertise in the working group as far as doing things across lots of components and sort of project-wide refactoring work. And then the other place is, once you sort of really have your plan together of these are the changes we need to make, it's easy for us to find people to go do sort of simple updates to the code base. So we can help you get people to work on that.
Mm-hmm. So with current plan, we are not our goal for this cap is to do so the original migration proposed by this cap will be pretty small because we want to only focus on introduction of new API and like big impact, big results in logs. So of course there will be later the next step after this cap is teaching or like writing user guides and teaching like contributors to use to use this new interface and how to use it, and that would be the I imagine that would be case that would need pretty like to scale. That would so I don't know if we would do it just after introducing like, or if we should do it when we still have dependency of Klog, or we should think about it like when we are proposing the like full alternative.
Okay. Yeah, well, just for, we're a resource when you need us. So please keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm.
We can try and make this happen faster once you're ready. I think I'm pretty satisfied with the current cap. I need to go through and do, one more pass at it. But I think what I'm comfortable if other people are comfortable with it, because it's had so much debate already. I don't want to like block you when a lot of other people are already comfortable with it.
Okay, so so I think that most of the debate was on like having opinionated this idea about how logs should look like. So we tried to move it out of the scope of the cap because we don't want to tackle the opinionated. And second was about discussion about amount of work that we needed to do. So we needed to address that. But the so exact idea how to utilize
I think
this work between other components is still like afterthought. So I was really keen to having to making sure that this this makes sense in, like for component base.
Yeah, I think it does make sense. And I definitely think we want a common set of options for logging across all components, and that's going to be things like verbosity and the format. And then I don't know if there's too many, probably like where your logs are going, whether you're sending them to a file or standard out, or like the three major ones.
Yeah, Chris Hine and I were just talking about how controller runtime and KubeBuilder have decided not to use Klog as well, and a lot of that was just based on the usage of timestamps. So, like, yeah, allowing folks to configure these things in a sensible and more discoverable way is totally in our interest. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, I'm happy to put the common set of options in component base, especially if you think that makes it easier to move to like a more generic interface down the road and have component base be the concrete implementation of that. That's fine.
So I think it would. So I have like, I think we can approach like the configuration in two ways. So because there are two parts to configure those two logging formats. So one is we need to have a common flag and picking a mechanism for some implementation, which also means that there needs to be some registry that people can register their implementation. And secondly, like providing this implementation, like someone being able to register a new implementation. So technically,
why would you have to register? Are you trying to go even further and like allow people who are invoking the binary to choose which implementation they're using as opposed to the binary authors choosing it? Or
So the question, so I don't know if currently component base, does it use Klog currently?
No, not directly. I mean,
Yeah.
Klog is just separate. Components use Klog.
If you provide this configuration, then it would mean that Klog would need to be
yeah, the question of how to translate this new configuration into Klog for older components, if that's what you're asking, is I think an open question. Like there probably needs to be a like an opt-in to the new way of configuring logging, right? And then a standard translation from these new options to Klog's options. Or something. Yeah.
So we could, I don't know, technically we could like this was my idea, because like you said, you don't use Klog, so having like implementing this like decision about switching the configuration would require you to somehow depend on Klog. But we can.
What was the thing you said about Klog having other dependencies? Because I thought, wasn't Klog just a fork of glog, which was like didn't have any?
I would need to. I can try to look into. So, problem with dependencies was something that Tim Hawking mentioned, that we. But if it's okay with you to import Klog, we can. I can look into how many like dependencies there are. But if you're okay with that, we can.
I think that sounds okay to me. I mean, we can look at how big it would be. It may already be imported in component base.
Okay.
I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if it was. I just don't think we've explicitly stated that anywhere. Yeah. And I think the other piece here is when we add this logging config structure, like that is also the standard structure that needs to be, provided as a substructure of other component configurations for configuring your logs. And then we probably need a way to opt in to choosing to use that new substructure or falling back to like the old flags that Klog was registering.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I think our concern would be like making sure that the helpers to set all that up are implemented in a common place, so that each component isn't left to its own devices to figure out how to wire these things together.
Yeah. I think, okay, makes sense for me. I think we can figure it out, like the details during implementation, but yeah.
Yeah, I think we can figure that out in a code review.
Yeah. So.
Okay, cool. The other thing, so the helper methods for producing the consistent resource identifiers, that sounds like something that might be more appropriate for API machinery than component base, since it's sort of close to that metadata concept in API machinery. So I don't know if you've talked to them much about what a standard, it's like a compact resource identifier string would be. I mean, we already have the path, like the resource path on the API server. I don't know if we would want to just default to that, or if we really want it to be specific to each, like a different key for each object kind. I'm not sure just a different key for a different, each kind is sufficient, because the API groups act as namespaces for kinds. And so you could, in theory, have the same kind name in two different API groups. So there may be a need to differentiate that. further?
Max, I think I agree. Like that would be the team to best talk about it. So currently, our main goal is. So we want to have, because we are introducing this structured API, we want to be able to be able to put object, like some Kubernetes object, and having ready methods or some internal logging parts to figure out how it should be represented. So this is like our long-term structured logging. For current problem that we are tackling for the text logs, we just want something simple that is obvious and uniform. So if we had
I wonder if you want, for queryability, if you want it to just all be compact in a string, or if you actually want to split each metadata field out into a separate key.
Okay. Okay, I can try to think about this. So for us, for text logs, we are not investing too much into it, because though I assume you can go as far and to complicate your logs. This is much more interesting topic for JSON based logs.
Okay. Okay, I see. It's split out. How does metadata.pod know to split that out for a structured log, but not for a unstructured log?
So if I remember correctly, so this would be part of implementation of Klog. So metadata pod would return an object that, or dedicated structure that would include object maybe, or object reference, or specific object, like logging dedicated reference to object. And then Klog would either use a string method on it, or trying to string by and result in this, or we could use some either JSON or our own formatting to put or try to always convert to JSON if we get our expected types.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, but there is proposition from Wojtek to maybe, if possible, to hide this, because
yeah, it would be nice to just pass in a pod, and they should all support there's an object interface.
Object metadata.
There should be metadata accessor methods for anything that supports the object interface.
Yeah.
I think it's just runtime.object is the interface. So I think you if you were choosing, it's I don't know how much it would slow down your logging implementation to do all that reflection, but if you were wanting to try and detect if an object that got passed in was a Kubernetes object, you could try and do that. It may be limited to what is registered in the scheme that your logging implementation is aware of as far as detecting that schema. So I don't know how complicated this would get, or how slow it would get, but we could look at it.
From feedback from Wojtek, I don't think there is a bigger problem than this, because apparently Klog loses lots of time on calculating or doing runtime recognition on formatting and then noticing that logs should not be generated because of verbosity set. So there is lots of place to improve, and maybe we could introduce those runtime checks, but we would need to first solve the problem of checking verbosity before we do any logic, runtime reflection logic.
Okay.
And second problem would be if we want to. Okay. So second problem would maybe be more from Tim Hogan, that we would want to have maybe API that is generic and not Kubernetes native, Kubernetes aware, but maybe we should think about how we can solve it differently. So when I mean, like, we could either put this logic into to do it by client that uses the library, or either put it within the logging library, and it would be just a design decision, like if the logging API should be Kubernetes aware.
Yeah, okay. Okay, what else should we see here?
So, like, from component base, I think, like, we are only proposing or still deciding where to put metadata, and logging configuration, that's all. So I think that's all from my
So what is the overall migration plan now? Like, we get these new methods in place, we tell people to start using them. Are we going to organize an effort to redo all the existing logging as well?
So we don't want to block cap on migration, or we don't want to block the feature on the migration.
Sure.
So the currently cap only changes those lines. I assume after this cap is integrated, we will need to update all our user guides and maybe have some try to communicate maybe to different SIGs about the new logging guides. But currently there is no concrete plans required to do to organize this. Mainly because how many people we throw at the problem, or how many automation we write to solve this problem, the bottleneck would be the review.
Sure. I think we can find a few reviewers in this group at least to help share that burden. I'm happy to review it seems like they would typically be pretty simple PRs to review. Because it's just, every log line change, it's a one line change for each thing, right? It's like I'm changing from this method to that method. Check that the same information got plumbed, and it's pretty uniform. You could even probably write a style guide and just tell reviewers, just make sure it matches the style guide, and that this is the transformation we expected, and I think you'd get through review pretty quickly.
Yeah, but so we want to make it pretty natural progression based on style guides, and maybe some nudging of contributors to use it, and try to monitor how much. So try to detect when is the point where we will be committing to maybe automatic migration. So for example, when we gets 90% of log calls in the new API. And we know that those are really minuscule, like those generate a really minuscule number of log lines. Maybe we should then do automatic migration, because then it would be not 10,000 but maybe a couple hundred, or like maybe 1,000 lines that we will change.
Okay. Yeah, you may okay, I agree it's too early to figure this out right now, and we shouldn't block you developing like the newer pieces of this logging library on that. So yes, we should merge this cap. I think that we maybe want to do it sooner than 90%, but we can discuss that in the future.
Yes, so idea is when we go to beta, we will be collecting feedback about both new format, both new API from users, both new feedback from developers about new API, people using maybe JSON, or we will see then what are people happy with it. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
that sounds good. I think we're like 10 minutes over here, but so thank you so much for coming and presenting. I think that was really useful for us and helpful for our understanding. I'll take another pass at the CAP this week. Give my LGTM. And I'm excited about it.
Yeah, if you can, it would be good to have LGTM. Like, yeah, from if you change your component, it would be nice to have used LGTM.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much. Take care.
Thank you.